Ballots have been mailed out across the state for the general election. Voters will be making choices on president, state officials, and charter amendments. We'll take a closer look. Plus, we'll hear from the two candidates making a bid for the State Senate District 25 seat, Christina Kim Marshall and Chris Lee. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Election 2020 on Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Daryl Huff. Voting is already underway in Hawaii and across the nation. Coming up, the candidates for State Senate District 25, where Windward Oʻahu and East Honolulu residents will be choosing between veteran lawmaker Chris Lee and his opponent Christina Kim Marshall. But first, a look at the other races on the ballot, plus some of the charter amendments in Honolulu. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email, call, or tweet your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Now to our first half guests. Joining us via the internet, Chad Blair is the politics and opinion editor for Civil Beat. He's been a reporter and teacher in Hawaii for more than 25 years. And Colin Moore is an associate professor of political science and director of the Public Policy Center at UH. Guys, let's start off with the charter amendments because, I've been surprised how many people, even in my own news department, have come to me and say, what are these charter amendments? What's going on? Because there's been so much focus on everything else and really very little focus on our local elections. Let me just go through the first one. And this one is about a term limit for the prosecuting attorney. And it reads, shall the revised city charter be amended to establish for the prosecuting attorney of the City and County of Honolulu a term limit of 2 consecutive full-year terms? Let me start with you, Colin Moore from UH. What's the genesis of that, and why do you think that's something people should look at?
Well, I think that the genesis of this are the scandals in the prosecuting attorney's office, and a sense, too, that really for 40 years, there's only been 3 people who've ever held that office. And so I think this comes out of this sense that we need more variation in the prosecuting attorney. And to do that, we're going to establish term limits. So this is a very straightforward charter amendment. If you think that we should limit the prosecuting attorney to 2 consecutive terms, voters should be in favor of it. And I think this tends to be popular. Voters tend to like term limit bills. I expect that there will be support for this, particularly because people will see this as a way to remedy the problems in the prosecuting attorney's office.
Chad, you folks at Civil Beat actually polled this question.
Thanks, Daryl and Colin. Aloha from sunny Guam, by the way, where America starts its day. I'm kidding, of course. That's my backdrop for Zoom.
I assumed it was your backyard. I don't know,
Here it is, 8 o'clock at night. Yeah, we polled this question, and it's overwhelmingly 70% plus want to limit the prosecutor's office to 2 4-year terms. By the way, that's what applies to the mayor of Honolulu, 2 4-year terms. That's what applies to the city council members here on Oahu, 2 4-year terms. Why the double standard? Colin's absolutely right. This is about Keith Kaneshiro. His name is never actually mentioned in the literature that the council was putting together when they wrote that resolution. But when the resolution talks about, exactly, when the resolution talks about entrenched power and corrupt, and this is someone who can prosecute people, someone who can come after people. And Keith Kaneshiro will have his day in court one day, I imagine. But this is a no-brainer. I should just add real quickly, there's also term limits on some of the other counties as well.
Just to be really clear, Keith Kaneshiro was on leave now. He was the subject of a target letter from the federal prosecutor, the same one that prosecuted his former subordinate, Catherine Kealoha, and he's now on paid leave, probably till the end of his term. What's also interesting, though, and just to jump ahead, we want to talk a little bit about the prosecutor's race this year. How unusual is it, right, that we've actually got an open seat for prosecutor? I don't know when the last time that happened, but it makes for kind of an interesting race.
It absolutely does. And voters have 2 pretty distinct choices here, too. 2 very well-qualified attorneys and a former judge, so Steve Alm and Megan Cow. And what's interesting to me is that Megan Cow has run as the more law and order, more conservative candidate. And one thing I took from the polling that was done around this, so as I recall, Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve Allen is a fair bit ahead in this from the polling. But also voters, even though there hasn't been that much coverage of this race, voters have got the idea that Megan Cow is the more conservative candidate. She has Republican support, more conservative support, but this is, I mean, really for this office, this is terrific. Voters have two well-qualified candidates, and it's a clear choice. So, I mean, I think either one would probably do a terrific job and bring independence and a fresh approach to that office.
Chad, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, interestingly enough, you pointed it out, Daryl, Keith Kaneshiro actually still is in the job. There is an acting prosecutor, Dwight Nanamoto. He lost during the primary, but he wanted to keep that job. If Keith Kaneshiro had wanted to, in theory, he could be on the ballot, could have been on the ballot this fall. And since I lived in Hawaii over 30 years, it's either been Keith Kaneshiro or Peter Carlisle. That's the only choice you've had. You got to go back to Charles Marsland, right, Daryl, back in 1980s or so. But that's been it. But I think this is a no-brainer, and I think Colin's absolutely correct, calling Megan Cow more the law and order, follow the book, buy the book. Steve Alm, longtime judge, the Hope probation program he's best known for, a little bit more pragmatic about that, more progressive. And sure enough, more liberals, more moderates, more Democrats support his candidacy.
One of the things that I find interesting about this at all is because I think the reason that we tend to automatically reelect our prosecutor is because it's an unusual position to have elected in Hawaii. On the mainland, they elect judges and prosecutors and deputies and sheriffs, all over the place. But here in Hawaii, we don't get involved in law enforcement so much as an electoral process. So it's interesting to have an open seat and have this discussion about progressive prosecution versus, more traditional prosecution.
I think, go ahead, Chad.
No, Colin, please.
I was just going to say that, that was one of the interesting things about the primary race for this, is you had Jackie Esser, who did very well herself and really did represent that very progressive position.
I would just add that the prosecutor on Hawaii County is an elected position, no term limits. And the prosecutor on Kauai County is also an elected position, no term limits. But on Maui County, which of course includes Lanai and Molokai, it's an appointed position by the mayor with the approval of the council.
Okay, so let's move on to the next of the charter amendments. I know we feel like we're jumping around here a little bit, but I think that was a good segue, if I do say so myself. Shall the revised city charter be amended to establish a youth commission under the managing director? I was just kind of thinking, Chad, I know you've done quite a bit of research on these things and have done your own stories about this. Here we are in the middle of a pandemic, adding a new agency to government. It made it, I don't mean to lobby against this one way or another, but it seems like, what's the genesis of this and what's the value that is seen in having an organization like that?
This comes from Tommy Waters, the councilman, and it was actually a 2019 proposal, and then it was heard this year and was eventually approved, I think, by July. Of course, COVID had come to town by then, but not back in 2019. And the idea behind it is, yeah, it does create another level of bureaucracy, if you will. I think the youth commission would actually have the ability to have a budget and hire people. I think it's 15 people that would be appointed, council members, 1 each, all 9, the mayor 6. But basically what Tommy Waters said was, young people feel disenfranchised. You're seeing more and more of them getting involved. And the resolution that led to this charter amendment question actually pointed to that Bill 40. Remember that one on styrofoam banning here in the city and county? And a lot of young people, a lot of millennials, a lot of Generation Z turned out. They're also turning out for issues related to climate change, which includes styrofoam. And the idea is you ought to have a voice in our government. So that was the idea behind this resolution and this charter question.
Colin?
I agree with Chad. I mean, I think part of this is tied up into trying to do something for our really woefully low levels of civic engagement among youth. And so, I mean, I think really only the downside to this is the question you asked, do we really need another commission? But It also would be great. I mean, young people as young as 14 can be appointed to this, so all the way to 24. So you really would get really young voices. And I think this is largely a good thing. I mean, politicians and our elected officials really don't get that many opportunities to interact directly with youth, and this would institutionalize those interactions. So I think on balance, it's probably a good thing.
It's interesting. What the very first question we got from a viewer is, how would you improve voting and voter participation in Hawaii? And it seems like our conversation is that would be a major way, is if you could find some way of engaging young people in the process, you might take care of that. Let me jump on to the next two charter amendments. We'll read them individually, but they really kind of go together. Number 3 is, shall the revised city charter be amended to allow the Honolulu Ethics Commission to control its own budget after it has been enacted? And the other one, number 4, is a real alphabet soup, but it's, shall the revised city charter be amended to require Ethics Commission staff to be appointed based on merit principles, but exempt them from civil service position classification plan, and to have the salaries of all Ethics Commission staff set by the Ethics Commission, subject to specific limitations. Colin, what's the message of these amendments and the intention of these amendments?
I mean, like the other one, this does in some ways connect to the Kealoha scandal. We won't get into that whole story, but I mean, effectively what this is doing is just giving the Ethics Commission more autonomy over its budget, more autonomy to hire the sort of people they think they need and to pay them the appropriate salary. That, combined, if you just want to think of it, in kind of a broad general term, that's what this is about. If you think the Ethics Commission should be given more autonomy, then these are charter amendments you'd want to support. If you're worried about creating an ethics commission that really is unaccountable, I mean, that might be a potential concern, because they are taking away some of the checks on their power if these charter amendments passed.
Chad, from what Colin is talking about, the word autonomy actually could be flipped on its edge to keep people from meddling in it. Has there been some history of that? Is that the concern that people
yeah, I mean,
we're not going to do the whole backstory. I know we decided against it because of the time it would take.
That's all right. I mean, you're spot on. But in addition to the Kealoha case, there's been a lot of tension between the Ethics Commission. That we're talking the city, right? The Honolulu Ethics Commission, not the State Ethics Commission. But there's been a lot of tension with the Caldwell administration and with Corporation Council, which is the legal team, but really is the reports to the mayor. And I won't go into every detail, but one of the things that came up a couple of years ago is Chuck Totto, the former head of the Ethics Commission. He wanted to spend $600 for a GPS tracker because they were looking into overtime abuse. Well, the Ethics Commission is actually administratively attached to Corporation Council, the lawyers. So they have the sign off. And long story short, they didn't end up getting that tracker that they wanted. The idea here is to give them control. By the way, the prosecutor's office, speaking of the history of questionable ethics, it has the same law in effect. And so the Ethics Commission basically would be similar to the prosecutors. It would control its budget. One other thing, the city council ultimately would approve the budgets for the city Ethics Commission, just as it does the prosecutor's office.
And just to sum up, I think that tension began between the mayor and the Ethics Commission back with his inaugural ball. I mean, it goes back that far.
It does.
Speaking of the mayor, another clever segue. I didn't say so myself. Big race there, guys. Chad, why don't you start? What are your thoughts at this stage of that race?
I've been surprised that it's gone so negative. I wasn't expecting this from two first-time politicians, right? Rick Blangiardi, Keith Amemiya, and of course, as to who's being negative, that's up in the air. But certainly the Amemiya campaign has been pretty critical of Blangiardi, tying in with Donald Trump and some other concerns. There's also the involvement of two super PACs. One of them affiliated with the Carpenters Union, which has been pro-rail. We used to call them PRP, right? Now it's Be Changed Now, but they're spending heavily to hurt Keith Amemiya, and it isn't pretty, and there's all sorts of things. That's what has surprised me, is that it's descended to this. I should also point out there's another PAC, I think it's also PRP, spending favorably running positive ads for Blangiardi. So that has caught me by surprise, just how two newcomers, and yet already they're, if you will, they're becoming veterans at how politics often is.
Let me ask Colin, though, a mayor's race, there's a lot at stake. There is a lot of money that flows through the mayor's office to a whole lot of different kinds of people and different organizations. I mean, so having a friend in the mayor's office really does mean something.
Oh, absolutely. And especially when you're talking about the construction industry, it's crucial. And so I'm not surprised to see all of the interest and the super PAC's involvement, but I agree with Chad. I was surprised at how negative this got and how quickly it got negative. I wasn't anticipating that. I mean, given, especially from the Amamiya side, given that, I think part of Keith Amamiya's image is that he's a nice guy who gets along with everyone and is sort of a peacemaker. But the thing about these mayor's races that this always happens is, although they're technically nonpartisan races, they always end up inserting partisanship. This happened when Charles DeJoux ran, of course, and it's happening this year. I mean, Keith Amamiya was very quick to identify himself as a Democrat early on, even though this is a nonpartisan race. And they've made a lot out of Rick Blangiardi, comparing him to Trump. They have run ads saying we don't need another media mogul. And of course, this took off when Rick Blangiardi admitted that he voted for President Trump.
Chad, one of the things that strikes me about the mayor's race is that even though it's nonpartisan, the fact of the matter is that person has the power to hire a great number of other people. So when you have a person who's, say, a Republican or a Democrat, they have the capability of building this huge team, often for a run for the governor's office.
Right, but often unsuccessfully. In fact, no Honolulu mayor has ever become governor. Frank Fossey tried, bless him, wherever he is today, many, many times. They even changed the law, right? You had to resign to run if you were mayor, if you're running for governor, but it hasn't happened. We all know that Kirk Caldwell has ambition for higher office, and that would be the governorship, although there is talk about Congress as well. And yes, that's a lot of patronage, isn't it? That's a lot of people that can donate to your campaign. You'll see it on the campaign finance records. Your own staff gives very, very generously, not quite as much as the developers and whatnot, but there's a vested interest in getting in that job and getting people to support you.
Very briefly, because I want to move on to some more races. We got about 10 more minutes together. The thing that I find interesting is that with the mail-in ballot system, Colin mentioned he was surprised how early it got negative. Fact of the matter is, I think 20% of the votes are already in. So if you're going to do a smear or you're going to go negative, you got to do it early now.
That's right. I mean, the change to mail-in ballots has really changed the way campaigns think. I mean, they used to want to peak right before Election Day, and now it's not totally clear when you peak, although I think people tend to feel now that you want to peak, you get your message out most strongly right when the ballots are mailed out, and then right again before the Election Day deadline.
Chad, what do you think the impact is on the timing of the campaigns, and do you think we're seeing that impact now?
Oh, I think so. I mean, think about it. If the polls are showing you up 20 points or behind 20 points, why would you keep spending tens of thousands of dollars on TV commercials, leading up in the last week of the campaign? Why would you be sign waving, on the Friday or the Monday in the case of the general? Well, of course you're going to do that anyway, because it's that undecided. You're going to spend every last dollar to get people to vote. But it really is going to change the way people get things out. Most campaigns like to define who they are early, as well as their opponents. That's just common sense. People do that all the time. Having the ballots come, October 5th, October 6th? That's when they were coming here on Oahu. I think by that weekend, they were already on the neighbor islands. That changes a lot.
Yeah, just briefly, as a longtime political reporter, we used to always, a week out before the election, that's when the smears would happen. And you had no time. Like, it would plop on your desk, and you're going, what is this big brown envelope? And you open it up, and there's all this horrible stuff. You're 4 or 5 days out from an election, and you've got no time to really vet it. This year, when stuff circulated around, you had time to look at it and go, is this really what it seems like? Can we look into this? Let's ask some questions. So it did change that little dynamic too. Let's talk a little bit about the mayor's race, the Big Island mayor's race now. That's also a very high profile race and got a couple of real interesting characters. Chad, why don't you start off?
Well, Mitch Roth, I think he's still the sitting county prosecutor, been in that job for a long time, pretty well recognized name. But it's the other candidate that's on the ballot that has got a lot of people by surprise. Ikaika Marzo, who's identified as a community organizer or a social media guru, if you will. During the lava flow a couple of years ago, he was really a source to go to on what was really happening with Kilauea down there in Puna. But the fact that Harry Kim, the sitting mayor, didn't make it, finished third, and therefore did not advance to the general election is a really big surprise. So again, a fresh face. Kaika Marzo, no political experience. Mitch Roth, prosecutor, but not having served, I don't think he has a council background. But that's a brand new face for many people in the Hawaii County.
Colin, your thoughts on that, and in particular, do you think this could be, this is the same island that, I can't remember his name, Akana, that elected Bernard Akana, right, elected a complete newcomer. Do you think that that's a possibility this year?
I think it's unlikely. I mean, I think it's possible. Actually, Mitch Roth has raised more money, but Ikaika Marzo, I mean, he does have support. He did raise money. He has an advantage, which is he already had this huge social media presence that helped him a lot in the primary. So it's possible, although I suspect, for example, that a lot of the Harry Kim voters, those are going to turn out to be Mitch Roth voters. So I think Mitch Roth is the favorite to win this race, but it is possible. I mean, Ikaika Marzo sort of came out of nowhere too to win that primary. I mean, he was well known, but there were a lot of other well-known figures in that primary. So yeah, Mitch Roth is the favorite, but this again, I'll say this is that also voters have two really distinct choices. I mean, two people who offer different perspectives, who have different backgrounds. So I mean, that's really encouraging to see too.
Just to throw another insight, we had the two of them on this show, and they get along really well. It's actually kind of sweet how nicely they get along. It was like, oh, okay, I like it.
Unlike Keith Amamiya and Rick Blangiardi, yeah.
No comment from me on that one. So, Council in Honolulu Council, we're having it's going to be a revolution this year. 5 new council members are being elected. We've already elected. Okay, help me here.
Calvin Say,
Andrea Topola, and Calvin Say.
Topola.
So there's 3 good council races out there for open seats. Colin, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Chad.
No, Colin.
Colin, please.
Oh, okay.
Right.
This is the tricky thing about Zoom.
Yeah.
One of the more interesting ones is this Windward Council race. You have 2 well-known figures, Esther Kia'aina, who served in the Obama administration, ran previously for OHA and lost, and then Greg Thielen, who is well-known partially because of his mother and his sister, Cynthia Thielen and Laura Thielen. My view of this is that Esther Kia'aina likely will be the favorite, I think, in this race. She has a lot of support. She did very well in the primary. But I think Thielen has a lot of support from the business community over there. He's the slightly more conservative candidate. We don't do polling on these races, but once again, I mean, you have 2 good choices. These people are both perfectly well qualified. They offer distinct choices, and but I do think that Kia'aina, my sense is that she's the favorite heading into the election.
Chad, for you, let me jump to another race. I find the race in Eva very interesting.
Okay, we're going to make sure we're in the right area here. So this one would be the one with Willis Sparrow versus Augie T. Is that right?
Yeah, Augie T.
So here's Willis Sparrow, veteran politician, spent many years in the state legislature, ran for higher office a couple of times, Congress, lieutenant governor, didn't make it. Formerly worked, I think he worked for Frank Fozzie back in the day, and he wants to be on the council now. He's a very familiar, very popular figure in so many ways, running against Augie T, which everybody calls him Augie T. And he's a comedian, he's an entertainer, but he's someone who has spent a lot of time paying attention to what's going on in his district and going to neighborhood boards and whatnot and making presentations. And it's a very interesting case. People call it the veteran versus the comedian. Maybe that's a disservice to Augie, I don't know, but fascinating. We could probably use a few more laughs in office, to be honest. Will's got a pretty good sense of humor too, I would just add.
Augie T, though, has a good backstory. I mean, he came out of very hard scrapple places and worked his way up, and it was a success. Colin Moore, the third of those council races in Kalihi, right?
Right, this is the Kalihi race. You have two young former legislative staffers, Radiant Cordero and Jacob Aki. Again, well-qualified, young. I have a little bit of a harder time differentiating the two of them based on their policy positions and the others. I mean, the other two races, you have pretty distinct ideas about where folks stand. But again, you know, these are, I think they're both, you know, they're both in their 30s. I think Radiant Cordero is just 30. So whoever wins this race, we're going to have a very young member of the city council.
You know, in the state senate, there's maybe 4 or 5 really competitive races, among them Sam Sloan versus Stanley Chang. And we don't have much time to talk about this, but I'm wondering do you think that the hyper-partisan world, you think it's going to help Republican candidates in this state? You think that some of the Republicans who are challenging will maybe have a better chance if they're kind of galvanized? Chad, do you think that the presidential election is going to affect these local races at all, the partisan ones?
Well, and Colin knows this stuff even better than I do, but there's the down ticket, the down ballot effect, right? What happens if the presidential candidate is tanking and it's going to lose on a landslide? And right now, the way things are looking, Joe Biden certainly has a comfortable lead. We have a poll coming out tomorrow, by the way, that shows how Joe Biden's doing against Donald Trump here in town. And yeah, if your top guy or woman is losing, it's going to hurt you. I don't know how much it really trickles down beyond Congress, congressional seats, I suppose the governor. Once it gets down to the state legislature, I don't know that it has as much effect. The problem for the Republican Party locally is they just don't have a heck of a lot of people in office. They've only got one senator in the 25-member Senate, and
okay,
what is it, 5? Yeah. So.
Okay, yeah. Well, you know, guys, that was a lickety split half hour, but we have to stop.
Oh no!
So much, yeah. So we want to thank our guests, Civil Beat Editor Chad Blair and political analyst Colin Moore. We'll be back after this Hikino story from students at Mililani Middle School.
A traditional Hawaiian blessing, which allows students to step foot on Mokuʻea Island, starts off an unusual day for Mililani Middle School students. Mokuʻea Island is a small island located off of Keahi Lagoon near the airport on Oahu. This historical site was an ancient fishing area where there once were many fish ponds. Once a year, 7th and 8th grade students paddle to Mokuʻea Island for a day of work.
We're just trying to perpetuate the history of this area, getting the kids to know the history before they come out and work the land, getting the kids conscious about taking care of the whole earth. What we like to focus on is I ka wā mamua ka wā mohope, which is on the back of our shirts. That means the future is in the past, so we have to look back at what our ancestors laid out for us. We're basically traveling in the canoe, so we're paddling in the wake of our ancestors, and then we're walking the aina.
Mililani Middle School students have been coming to the island since 2009, doing everything from planting native plants they raised at school to clearing brush.
We had help from the community to just clear this fish pond behind us, getting rid of the mangrove. Right now we're just trying to maintain the mangrove.
Maintaining plants on the island can be a challenge.
One of the problems with being on this island is it has no natural fresh water. So part of the problems with raising plants here is sustainability, and one of those items is the water that we need.
It doesn't rain a lot out here, but when it rains, it storms, it pours. So we just have a little water line coming in, and we have to pay for that water. So this water is going to help us to water all of our native plants. The water catchment system was a great idea by Jenny Kurohara. She's actually Dr. Kurohara. She got a grant to put this up on our bathroom.
In our class recently, we got the opportunity to make a water catchment designs, which would be built and to help at Mokuʻea. In our group, each person was given a job. So one person had to research the materials that we would use and how much, because we had a budget.
UH students came, and some of the people that worked on Mokuʻea came and took a look at the designs, and they chose the best ones out of the class. This project's important because I think Mokuʻea Island is one of the last places where in Hawaii how it used to be. It's important because we're able to still hold on to the past and show how important it is so they can continue living their lifestyle.
It's always what we can do for her, not what we can get out of her. And we would like to be able to keep Mokuʻea for all generations to have it as an outdoor classroom. Yes.
This is Savannah Fernandez from Mililani Middle School for Hiki No.
Welcome back. The seat for State Senate District 25 was left open after incumbent Laura Thielen decided not to run for re-election. Communities in this district include Kailua, Maunawili, Waimānalo, Hawaii, and Portlock. Republican Christina Kim Marshall grew up in East Honolulu and currently resides in Waimānalo. She graduated from Manoa's Shidler College of Business and studied abroad in Japan. She is an import-export business. On the Democratic side is State Representative Chris Lee. He's a graduate of ʻIolani School and Oregon State University. He was first elected to serve District 51 in the State House of Representatives in 2008. Let me start with you, Kim. What are you hearing from constituents? What's the most important issues to them? And is it kind of partisan, more partisan this year, given all the activity around the presidential election?
Thank you for that question, and thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be here tonight. I don't think that the race is partisan at all this year. I think that people really care about our community and our ohana, and they're concerned about the health and safety of our people and the economy. And COVID issues, as well as homelessness and reopening the economy, are the most important to the people in our district, I've been hearing.
Chris, what is your take along the same lines, or do you think, I'm asking you about the partisanship, it's like the 500-pound gorilla in the room.
Yeah, well, I think everybody's having a good time watching Saturday Night Live these days and keeping it at a distance. And I think, definitely here with our economy starting to reopen with COVID, sort of top of mind for everybody. It really is a question of, what's next? I think that's what people they're done with COVID, we're done with this year, what's next? And I think for our purposes, asking about, what an election means for what's next, it's a question of where's our economy going to go? How are we going to come out of this? Not just rebuilding what we had before, but really rethinking all the things that we don't want to go back to.
Christina Kim Marshall, are you, how do you feel about the reopening of tourism today? How did you feel? Did you see the video of people flowing off the planes? I think we had 8,000 people show up on our shores today. How do you feel about that? How do you think your supporters feel about that?
I think that a lot of people are excited to get back to normal. Of course, we have precautions and we want to reopen safely and consider the health and well-being of everyone. But we lost over 1,000 businesses during COVID. 75% of the restaurants aren't going to make it. A lot of people don't think that we cared enough for our local businesses during the during the COVID shutdowns. And I think that the families that are hurting, that depended on local businesses to, feed their families at the end of the day, they're excited to get tourism back and going to some degree. But of course, with the health and safety and the regulations.
Do you feel like it was too overkill, what happened to the economy in this state?
Well, a lot of people say that we committed economic suicide. And according to economists at Mānoa, they said in April that only 23% of our economy, 23% of Hawaii's GDP is tourism. 77% of our economy is non-tourism. So in April, they said we should have been focusing, our policymakers and our state should have been focusing on how to gradually reopen the other 77% of our economy that's non-tourism.
Chris Lee, in terms of your own opinion about the shutdown and its impact, do you feel like, it sounds like what she's saying, that it was too drastic for business?
I think the frustrating thing that everybody feels, in the beginning, I think it was tolerable, right? People understood what was going on. I think the frustrating thing is that we haven't been able to, I think, come together with a set of policies that are clear and that have some sort of time frame to them so people can plan. I think that's really, the businesses that we talk with, friends of mine who run shops in Kailua and certainly our co-op in Waimānalo and some of the other places have been frustrated, I think, by this. It's not that they don't want to try. It's not that they don't want to do their part. It's that they're looking for some direction and certainty that isn't going to change hour to hour and day to day.
That same debate is going on right now about the school system. Do you feel like schools need to get open sooner, quicker? I mean, I think that we rolled back again, so there's very few people actually going to school right now.
Yeah, I think it's frustrating, actually, talking with our teachers and some of our administrators at our local schools, because what the challenge they face is not only dealing with COVID and the health ramifications of managing a whole bunch of kids running around on campus, but rather, what sort of support are they going to have from the Department of Health? We know, for example, in some cases you've had positive IDs, both amongst staff or amongst students coming back. So what do they do? And I think the challenge they face right now is that they're not finding enough support there. And so they don't know what to do. And I think that probably isn't being translated to parents as well. Parents are just seeing things shut down. So the question is, as we come back in January, or at least as the legislature comes back, how do we connect those dots between the resources and the PPE and all the stuff that needs to happen, as well as contact tracers with a school setting? And that mystery is yet to be solved.
Christina Kim Marshall, your own feeling about the school situation. I think that one of the messages that was coming from people who support opening schools was, children are very resilient and so on. But do you feel like they've been approaching school reopenings at the right pace, or do you think they should have moved it up a little quicker?
That's a great question. And I think that they should have had a program where they would allow the parents and teachers that were comfortable with going into the schools to do it, because there are a lot of parents, that's what America is about freedom and choice. And there were a lot of parents and a lot of teachers that did feel comfortable going back into the classrooms, but there were some that weren't. And then, the teachers and the students that weren't, they could have had the Zoom classes. But I think that a lot of the parents I've been hearing, feel that their children are missing out on, the social interaction and the, in-person learning. And a lot of students have been suffering from depression. I'm talking about elementary age up to high school.
And do you feel that, so what you're suggesting is that there would be sort of a hybrid thing where if you're comfortable, you could go, and if you're not, you could stay. The Department of Education didn't seem to even try anything like that. Is that your impression?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the way the DOE has managed this?
Yeah, well, I think myself and a lot of others thought that the DOE really overstepped and just said, this is the way it's going to be, and there are no choices and there are no questions. So, yeah.
Chris, how do you feel about how DOE handled this?
Well, I just point out that in a lot of our schools, the schools themselves were given the choice. Do you open, how are you going to do it, and all of that. But not having the resources and support to actually follow through with that, I think, has been the significant problem and barrier that they've faced. So I think at this point, I definitely feel like they dropped the ball on being able to do something safely and in some sort of time frame that makes sense for students.
It sounds like what you're saying, though, is that's more of an interdepartmental problem, because the DOE was relying on the Department of Health for that kind of advice and that kind of support. One of the things that people have complained about in the response from the state administration about this is that it doesn't seem like the departments are talking to each other. What do you think the main failure was, or if you do think there's a failure at the leadership level in dealing with this in issues like this?
Yeah, I think not just for education, but for just the overall response in general, whether you're business or tourism or whatever it is. It's frustrating because during an emergency situation, the governor and the mayor are really empowered to take action. The legislature has no official authority to do much. And you've seen them come together with a couple of committees, right, the Senate and the House, to sort of look at what the plans should be and to also ask the hard questions about, well, what is really happening here and what can we fix? And I think the conversation that's come out of that is, yeah, there's a whole lot that can be done better. And so the question from this point, as we start to reopen our economy now, is, all right, what sort of influence can the legislature and can other folks play in these emergency plans as they're developed? Because to this point, it's been sort of a black box in many ways.
You know, it's interesting to hear a Democrat essentially criticizing the Democratic administration of the state. So, but Kim, from a Republican point of view, what were your impression of the way the government responded to this, the local government?
To the whole shutdown?
To the ongoing response to the pandemic, reopening plans and those sorts of things.
Well, I think that we can see why we need to end career politics, because Governor Ige has been in office since I was born in 1984. And we can all see that he had no long-term plans and he didn't know what to do. And I think that it's very important that we all, come together. And I don't think that lawmakers should feel like they know everything and they're God over us per se, because like Rick Blangiardi was saying, the businesses that have suffered through the pandemic, the politicians, our governor and mayor, did not include them in any conversations. We need our community to work together to find real answers for the real problems in our community.
Chris Lee, this district is crazy. It starts at, like you're saying, the northern part of Kailua, all the way around, all this Windward area, and then a little piece of Hawaii Kai. Tell me about the district. Is it diverse? There's a lot of different kind of people there, or is it kind of homogeneous, or what's it like to run there? What's it like to?
So this is where I grew up, right? I mean, Kailua certainly is where my parents' house is and where I grew up, and learned to bodyboard with friends at Bellows in Waimānalo, and then spent a whole lot of time at Sandy's and around the corner. Over in Hawaii Kai, and it definitely is a diverse district, both geographically, both demographically, and the issues that these different areas face, while very different from traffic in Kalani and Ole on the Hawaii Kai side, it's very different than the pileups that we've seen in Waimānalo and these sorts of things. But ultimately, they are largely, on the whole, the similar and same issues. And I think if they had to boil it down to like 2 or 3 things that cut across, it is cost of living and dealing with that, price of housing and affordability. And more than that, what about our infrastructure? You see a whole lot of work that needs to be done, both on our highways, our surface streets, our schools, and on. And these things are ubiquitous, no matter which community you're in.
Christina Kim Marshall, your feelings about what issues are percolating up most in your district?
Well, one that I do keep bringing up, because I hear a lot of concern from my constituents, is the rising crime. The rising crime and violent crime has been increasing steadily since COVID, and during COVID, it's been spiking with the armed robberies, attempted kidnappings in our district. And I think that it's really important to work together with our local law enforcement, and I am endorsed by the State of Hawaii Organization of Police Officers, as well as the homelessness. The homelessness has been getting worse and worse over the past 10 years, not better. So there are so many issues, and the cost of living, and they've just been getting worse and worse over the past 10 years. The career politicians haven't been making anything better. All of the major issues are public school systems, everything. It's been getting worse, and the lack of affordable housing, not better over the past decade.
Sounds like something you say when you're running against somebody who's been in office for a while. How do you want to respond to that?
Well, I mean, I think it is easy to sort of blame all our problems on a whole number of different things, and especially government. But the truth is, these problems don't get solved by any one entity, right? No single elected official is going to come in and fix everything. No single business is going to come in and change a community. It takes everybody, and it takes a village. And there's a good example of that in Waimānalo, where just as COVID broke out, a bunch of the homeless folks from Waimānalo Beach Park and other areas were shooed out by the city. And it wasn't government that stepped in to actually fix everything, but it was a local Waimānalo resident who said, you know what, we've got some land, we've got local businesses that are donating materials, we're going to build a temporary homeless shelter, and has housed dozens of families since throughout this to keep them safe. And now we've been helping them actually go through the paperwork to figure out how they can make this work as a model for other places, and address a lot of the concerns they have that clearly need to be addressed still because it's sort of a brand new thing. But it was a partnership. And I think this is the kind of thing that we'd like to see in the future, where communities come together and people step up.
Let me ask you to respond to kind of what Christina Kim Marshall is saying, is that we've got this established group of politicians. You've been in office for a while. I mean, is it time to clean house? I mean, do you feel, you know, how do you respond to people who say the existing political class is the problem?
I think there's definitely, and you know, separating this conversation from national politics, where the politics is really ugly and where I think there is a lot of that sort of entrenched political everything that's causing problems. Here, Hawaii's a little bit different, and that's not to let politicians off the hook by any stretch. You know, everybody has a role to play, and I think one of the things that we've been able to do here in these last few years is recognize that, damn it, we can do better. And we have had a lot of our fair share in here in Hawaii of fingers pointed at, you know, special interest influence and corruption. I mean, if you look at HPD and Louis Kealoha and that whole situation, the prosecutor's office, certainly money moving around in various places. We did pass a couple of things that were really groundbreaking here.
I'm going to stop you there because you made me think of something, and I want to put this to Christina Kim Marshall. You know, one of the things that's on the ballot in the city side is a term limit for the prosecutor's office. You mentioned the prosecutor's office. Do you favor term limits if you ran for office and got elected? Would you favor limiting your own term in the state senate to say 2 terms?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, on my first mailer, that's one of the top things on my flyers, to enact term limits, because politics was never meant to be a career. It was to come out and do your civic duty and serve your community. And, you know, I believe that when you're in office for too long, and don't hold down a regular job, you're insulated and far removed from the community. And speaking of a special interest, which I wasn't gonna bring up, but my opponent has had 17 unions and PACs donate to his campaign over the past
but
year.
you just congratulated yourself for being endorsed by Shopo. I mean, is that?
Yeah, well, I guess that's one. No, I understand, but what I'm trying to say is, a local law firm that employs lobbyists, does he have, you know, favors to pay or special interests? Well, that's for the public to find out.
Okay, let me give Chris a chance to answer that, but also just answer on the term limit question. Do you think that it would be a healthier system if we had some sort of limit on how long people could be in the legislature?
So one of the first bills I actually introduced when I was first elected was a term limits bill. And I introduced it several years in a row.
And nobody talked to you after that?
Well, there's a lot of fun stories there. But when you think about it, if the end goal is ending, you know, corruption and special interest influence and all that, you look at the states that have actually adopted term limits, and there are a number of them across the country. What happens is the politicians in the place that traditionally have institutional knowledge, that are there because they're elected by the people, are coming out and leaving pretty quick. That empowers the lobbyists and the staff, unelected positions that actually end up running the policy. And this happens in states like Arizona and others that I've talked with colleagues, their elected officials, you know, at conferences and things, and they all complain about this. And so the actual answer, I think, is not going to be a silver bullet with term limits, but rather actually address the corruption. And that's one of the things that I was about to bring up last time, because there were a couple big changes we made just this past year. One of the bills I shepherded through actually bars the governor and mayor from receiving any sort of outside money from special interests while they're serving in office, to eliminate that potential for conflict of interest. This kind of stuff, concrete stuff, is what's ultimately going to change it.
Let me ask, though, just to give you a chance to respond to what you said, is you know, the power of unions in this town is pretty traditionally pretty strong. Are you and other politicians, in particularly the Democratic Party, influenced by the power of the unions to help you get elected?
No, actually, and I can't speak for anybody else, of course, but in my experience, you know, I ran for office very clearly with our community. I'm going to do these things, hit these priorities, and I feel like I've accomplished a number of them. But I've never asked for support for the sake of asking for support. If people support the things that I'm working on, whether it's dealing with reducing our cost of living through creating new jobs in energy in that particular industry, or dealing with climate change, dealing with homelessness. And if there are public sector unions that are supporting me because I feel like we should have a strong public sector that provides good government services, then great. I'm happy to accept your endorsement and support.
Okay, Chris, let's change the subject a little bit. With the crashing of the tourism industry during this economy, a lot of people are saying, well, we don't want tourism to come back to the level it was. I'd be curious whether you agree with that. And number two is, what ideas do you have, or what should we do to diversify this economy, strengthen this economy coming out of COVID?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked that. Some of the ideas are supporting health services, senior living, the high-tech industry, and software engineering. But I think that it's really important to deregulate the free market, because regulating the free market decreases jobs. And I think that we need to promote and help local businesses thrive. And before COVID, Hawaii was ranked last 50th in the nation to run and own a business. And we need to change that.
Okay, Chris, what are your thoughts about the best way to diversify this economy and kind of get away from our dependence on tourism?
Yeah, I think, we've for many years talked about moving into sustainable agriculture and local farming. We've talked about film and movies and all sorts of stuff that we've taken steps on, but we haven't really made significant investment and made significant commitment to. And I think this is that opportunity. COVID gives us the chance, as we recover and rebuild our economy over the next 2 years, and it really is just the next couple of years where we'll be making these big decisions about where we're going to go. This is the opportunity to really double down on those things. And we've put, I've been actually fortunate to put make a couple significant steps, providing grants for local farmers to actually grow local food and providing a market for them by pushing the DOE to try and adopt that local food, farm to table, make it happen. And I think this is the time coming out of COVID where everyone realizes, of course we got to do this. And so it's our challenge now to make sure that that happens over the next couple of years.
But one thing that strikes me is that historically the legislature has tended to try and diversify the economy by identifying, and I've heard people use the term, picking favorites, right? Is there some sort of general reform that might be better, create a healthier business environment overall, as Kristina is suggesting?
I think there's a lot you can do, but the obvious places where you can get the most bang for your buck as a society are looking at those places where we're already spending money and hemorrhaging out of Hawaii. That's going to be, $7 to $8 billion a year for energy that we're bringing in fossil fuels, and food, billions of dollars for that. So if we can eliminate those costs that we're taking money out of our economy and grow that stuff right here, that's not only creating a new industry, but it's hitting it on both sides. And so you're getting double the bang for your buck and creating more jobs for each dollar spent.
Okay, I've got to take care of some voter questions here. This is a question directly for Andy on Facebook, Christian for Christina Marshall. Donald Trump, the leader of your party, opposes voting by mail. Do you support vote by mail? Hawaii is one of the few states that is nearly 100% vote by mail. Do you think this is a good system? You feel like you're not going to be subject to fraud?
Well, I'd like to address the first part of his statement or question, that Donald Trump is the leader of my party. And I would like to remind voters that I'm running for a state seat and not a U.S. Congress or a national seat at all, and I'm focused on state politics. I have nothing to do with Donald Trump, and he was a Democrat actually for 38 years of his life, so that was a good portion of his life. And as far as mail-in ballots, I think, well, personally, I think it's a fine system, personally, and I think that we have a lot of different people in place, on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, that are volunteering their free time to make sure that the ballots are all collected and counted to a fair standard, and no one's cheated, and we aren't short, and I know in some years, maybe in the mainland per se, there's boxes of ballots that aren't counted because there wasn't enough manpower. But from what I'm hearing, a lot of people are volunteering their free time.
I have to ask this question because this is to both candidates, but I have a feeling it's targeting you somewhat. Who do you intend to vote for president?
I don't think that's relevant to my state race.
I plan to vote for Joe Biden, but I do think it's an absolutely relevant question because who's president and who controls Congress determines what kind of support Hawaii is going to get. And at a time when we are clearly suffering and facing a $4 to $5 billion deficit over the next few years, the kind of money and support we'll get from the federal government is going to dictate whether we make it or not, whether businesses are opened or closed, whether we can survive as a community.
Christina Marshall, I realize that this is quite a bit of putting you on the spot, but I mean, do you feel like you can't say that you're going to vote for President Trump because it'll hurt you, or are you afraid you'll get in trouble if you say you're not?
Well, I don't know who I'm going to vote for yet.
Okay, all right, very good.
And also, I would just.
Well, I actually,
okay.
we have to stop now. We're pretty much out of time, but
Okay.
it's a fast 25 minutes, isn't it? Thank you both very much. I want to thank all of you at home for joining us tonight, and we want to thank our guests, the candidates for State Senate District 25, Republican Christina Kim Marshall and Democrat Chris Lee. Next week on Insights, we'll hear from the 3 Hawaii Island candidates running for the District 5 seat in the State House, and on Oahu, the candidates running for House District 36 seat. Please join us then. I'm Darrell Huff for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha.